Okay, this is going to be an interesting off season. Let's get into this. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out my channel. As always, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to come listen to little old me talk about this dumpster fire that is the Miami Dolphins. Now, I said yesterday in the previous video that today we would see the press conference for the end of the year conference with Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. Now, I've been watching these for a long time, and I will say there was some differences in this conference, this end of the year conference, as opposed to ones that I've seen in the past. Now, usually, even during crappy seasons, there seems to be an air of slight sarcasm, kind of a lofty mood, a little bit of jovial smiles, and it seems a little off kilter considering we never really get where we want to go in the seasons of football that we've played. And this one seemed a little different, and I'll get into some of the reasons why. What I'm going to do is, first of all, if you haven't seen it, I'll post a link to it in the description. So if you want to go over and watch the video, the press conference, then go do that and then come back and watch the video, or vice versa, or whatever you want to do. I'll say that I listened to this press conference 7 times, and I'm probably going to listen to it a couple more times. It's 38 minutes long, so it's a good listen. I will say this. Usually if you watch Mike McDaniel in a press conference, it's a lot of talking. A lot of woo, just around and around and around, and kind of skirting the issues and what the questions actually were. In this press conference, there wasn't hardly any of that from him. The questions were very pointed and very direct, and some of them were hard questions to ask. And kudos to Miami Dolphins media for asking those questions and being so blunt about it, because quite frankly, after a season like this, these questions needed to be asked. And more importantly, we needed straight answers. And for the most part, we got those answers today. There was a couple things that they kind of jumped around to avoid answering, and I'll talk about it all here as I go through this. I took some notes and I wanted to talk about it. Now, obviously, this is going to be a little easier to follow if you go watch the video first, the actual press conference, but it's okay if you don't want to. I can give you the gist. I'm not going to give you too many opinions unless I'm giving an opinion after a statement of what they said. So just keep that in mind. I'll keep my opinions separate from what they said. I'll make sure you know the difference. Like I said, 38 minutes long, lots of things answered, lots of things talked about. And after we get through that, I want to give position grades for our team for the year. And the grades it's like a high school, like school of grades: A, B, C, D, E, and F. C being just barely passing, but slightly below average, or average to below average is what a C usually means. It depends, I guess, on your priorities and what you hold, value to. But I'll give grades on all of our positions and our coaches and everything at the end, and that'll be just my opinion and what I think and what I've gathered about this team as I've watched them this year and from the last preseason. Now, let's get into this press conference. It started out with Chris Grier saying that they were greatly disappointed, and the result of the season was completely unacceptable, and that they will not let it happen again, and they're taking steps to rectify the situation. And with that, he opened up the floor for questions from the media members, and that's when they really started getting into things. We'll start. I'm going to go kind of out of order with what the discussion was in the press conference, and just kind of look at some of the notes I made. Because like I said, I listened to it so many times that because I didn't catch everything the first time I watched it, so I went back, listened to it again, added some more notes, and that's kind of how I went through this. Uh, first of all, Grier and Mike McDaniel was nodding his head when this was said. Tua missing games was unacceptable, and he needs to be available, most importantly. And Tua needs to be better at that, making himself unavailable and making sure that he doesn't put himself in positions to compromise his health and the integrity of his body. Um, Tua is definitely still their guy. I mean, but definitely it was good to hear Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel say these things that, this thing with Tua where he takes these unnecessary risks, gets himself hurt doing it, and then that hurts the team in the process. It's unacceptable, and it is unacceptable. Whether you're a Tua lover or a Tua hater, I think we can all agree, or even if you're in the middle of the road, kind of more like me with Tua, that that's unacceptable. The health is a big issue, if not the biggest. I'd say it's my biggest issue with Tua is the staying available thing. They mentioned that he was very upset about having to miss not only the beginning of the season with the concussion, but missing the injury in the last couple weeks. We also find out not in this press conference, but the injury that Tua had is a torn hip flexor muscle. Now, if anybody's ever pulled a muscle in their hip, it's extremely painful, especially when you're moving. Now, a torn muscle, I couldn't even imagine. A torn hip flexor, you would feel doing just about anything. So I can understand why they didn't want him to play, because it would make him at serious risk for more injury for sure. So there was that about Tua. And that flexor muscle that he ripped, that happened in the Houston game when he tried to get a first down and dove for the marker and got kind of sandwich hit in the midsection by two defenders from opposite directions. It's all over the internet, so if you haven't seen it, you can go look. They also talked about the second string quarterback position and backup quarterback. And Chris Grier explained that, after the playoff game where Skylar Thompson almost beat the Bills a couple years ago, and he didn't really get a play last year much. Did decent during last preseason and off season. Didn't play much during the year because Tua was healthy the whole year. And then going into this year, they really felt like Skylar Thompson was their guy. And to a point, I can kind of understand why they thought that. And it's because, you guys have watched preseason just like I did. A lot of the things that we saw from Skylar in preseason and most importantly during practice was completely the opposite of what he ends up doing in games. It's not the same. So I'm not making excuses for the second string quarterback position that we have with our backup QBs, but I am saying that I can kind of understand the thought process that Skylar was better than he ended up being. And I think that the way they were talking like Skylar is done. Like they're not going to have him as their backup quarterback anymore. So hopefully that happens. And I'm not saying anything hateful or hurtful towards Skylar Thompson, but I think it's time for us to move on. And I think I think we can all agree that the Skylar Thompson project is over. Second string quarterback is going to be something they're going to work on this year, in this offseason. They realize the importance and are going to be looking in free agency and in the draft for quarterbacks. And that's a good sign. Whether you're a Tua fan or not, the fact that they're trying to think of the future and think of the times when we do have injuries, if we do have more Tua injuries, we need someone that can take the game over and still run the game and play. And that's what they're looking for. And I think it's good that they're going to look in the draft as well as in free agency. I think that's a fantastic idea. I've even said that they need to draft, maybe not in the first couple rounds, but they definitely need to pull a rookie quarterback out of this draft. And they also need to look in free agency, and then they said they're going to do it. So, that's good. One of the guys asked McDaniel if he was going to consider giving up play calling opportunities, and that's one of those things where it's good on the media for asking this question, because a lot of us feel that he should give up play calling. And Mike McDaniel, to his credit, did not skirt the issue. He said, straight up that he was going to evaluate and consider it, and he said that he has evaluated and considered it in the past, and it's something that he constantly has to evaluate and consider if he's going to be a head coach. And I agree. Things do change, situations change, and I think that the fact that he said he's willing to consider it and is going to, I think that's a good step. If anything, maybe that'll be the motivation in his evaluation. Maybe that'll be motivation in and of itself to be a little more consistent and a little better with the play calling. Um, one of the few things that they were very, very cryptic about and didn't want to divulge too much information, and understandably, was the Tyreek Hill situation. Now, they were very, very cryptic about Tyreek Hill. They refused to divulge how the conversation with him went, but they did say they were brutally honest, and they did have some meetings. They were brutally honest with him. They had hard, honest discussions, and Grier and McDaniel both said it was unacceptable for a captain and player to be unavailable and quit during a game, and that they made that abundantly clear to Tyreek Hill. They said the discussions were fruitful, but the way the question about Tyreek Hill was asked by the media was more along the lines of, have you guys told him that you're going to let him go since he doesn't want to play for us? And the way they were talking, it definitely seemed like they were talking about the discussions they had were mostly about how they were going to work this out, where they were going to let him go or get him traded or something. Tyreek had a chance to speak his mind as well, and apparently he did. Beyond that, we don't know much, but I'll tell you this. Tyreek's going to be gone. He's gone. So, any of you guys that are Tyreek Hill lovers, and you think that this is some kind of a thing where he was justified the way he acted, I don't know what to tell you. He was completely unjustified, especially wearing a C on his jersey. He is a leader and a captain of this team, and he set a terrible example doing what he did. Not just in the post-game interview, but during the game, quitting on the team. So that's kind of where we're at with Tyreek Hill. McDaniel said that the team exit meeting was highly focused on team dedication and setting examples. Setting examples for each other. Responsibility, leadership from the team was focused on. He said not being late for meetings and things of that nature were a point of discussion. He talked about fines and repercussions for not doing the things that you're supposed to do as a team. He said that accountability obviously needs to be a priority for the team, and he didn't feel like it was as much of a priority this season by the players, and that he is going to make sure that everybody on the team understands the priority of accountability. This makes sense because if you watched some of the player interviews after the team exit meeting, every single one of them said something along the lines of that, about accountability and repercussions for doing things wrong and showing up late for meetings and practices and all these things that can contribute to a bad season. And I think that's a large part of what happened this year. So it's good that Mike McDaniel answered the questions. He didn't drag on about it. He was very blunt about it and admitted that it was a problem. So that was good to hear. Okay, next, Grier. He was asked about the O-line and asked if it was a problem and if he thought it was a problem yet. And Grier smiled and he said, I figured I was waiting for you to ask that question. I'm surprised it took this long. He said it was a definite concern and they were going to make the O-line a point of focus this offseason. He walked back his comments about not being worried about the offensive line and said it was more of that he wasn't worried because of the work the O-line was putting in, and the offensive line group was the hardest working room on the team. And I do believe that. I do believe that the offensive line worked very hard all year. And not just the coaches have said it, but media members have noticed it and said it as well all year. The offensive line room did work very hard. It just that brings the point to talent and the players themselves. That sometimes they just don't work. and maybe they'll work somewhere else in a different scheme, but they aren't working for us. Um, he admitted they were bad, and then mentioned that the draft specifically, and said that we have 10 picks and we were excited to do something about this offensive line situation. They're going to be looking into the draft. They're going to be looking into free agency to rectify some of these issues on the offensive line. And that's a great thing. And I was very happy to hear that, and that Grier was front forward about it and said it is a problem. It didn't work out the way we thought it would. So good on him there. Um, Grier also said that this is tough because I don't want this to happen. He said that he did grant the Bears and the Saints, among some other teams, to interview Anthony Weaver for their head coaching vacancies. And you could tell by how Grier and McDaniel talked about him that they didn't want him to leave. They don't want Anthony Weaver to go anywhere, but they also mentioned that he's more than worthy, and he's earned the right to explore his opportunities into head coaching. They had nothing but great things to say. They spoke a lot about him in this interview and said nothing but great things. And I agree. I think Anthony Weaver is a fantastic coach. He's a leader of men. He's got a wonderful attitude. Players love to play for him. And I really don't want him to go anywhere. And it's clear that Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel both don't want him going anywhere either. But you have to give the man a chance to spread his wings, especially when he's earned the opportunity to at least take interviews. So they're allowing him to take interviews. But here's my thought. If they're allowing Anthony Weaver to take these interviews and to look and explore with all these teams that are looking for head coaches, you can bet that they have someone in mind to take the defensive line or the defensive coordinator position. And this comes into the rumor that I was hearing that I mentioned yesterday about Robert Saleh. He is going to be in Miami for a meeting with the Dolphins. That's unofficial. It's just a rumor that was spoken about by a few different people. And it seems that he's going to be going down to Miami for at least talks. Maybe not in the offices, but definitely going to be talking to some people down there. And I think Robert Saleh would be a fantastic fit as defensive coordinator if Anthony Weaver takes a head coaching job. If Anthony Weaver decides to stay with Miami, perfect. I really want to see what Anthony Weaver can do with this defense when he has a full off season and a year of experience under his belt with this team. I want to see how far he can take this defense, because I saw a good defense this year. So definitely hope that he stays. But if he doesn't, I think Robert Saleh would be at the top of my list if I was doing the interviewing and looking in coaching search. He would be at the top of my list for a D coordinator for sure. So that's pretty much it. And like I said, I'll have the press conference listed in the description for you guys to go click on and check it out. If you don't know where to find it, please go watch it, because we can't do anything about Chris Grier or Mike McDaniel being here. They're going to be here. They're not going anywhere. The owner has already said that they're not going anywhere. They're running it back with those two. So if that's happening, I was worried about this press conference before it happened, because I figured it was going to be the same old thing where they're just going to go around in circles and they're not going to really talk about anything and they're not going to address issues. However, I was very pleasantly surprised and slightly pleased that they were at least forthcoming enough to answer questions. So, and they admitted, where the faults were, and that was good to hear. So in the steps of things, coming out of a unsuccessful season and a disappointment of a season, the first thing you want is for the owner and GM and head coach to be honest and recognize the issues. That's the first thing you want. And from the way they talked, they recognized the issues. So I'm not going to give too much credit to Chris Grier or Mike McDaniel right now. I will say I was pleased with the way they conducted this press conference, and that they answered questions honestly and openly, for the most part, except for the Tyreek Hill thing. It was good to hear. So they've talked about the problems. They've talked about acknowledging it. They've talked about what they plan on doing, basically. So we'll see. Now that they've talked about it, what's left? Be about it, right? You talk about it, then you be about it. So next, they need to be about it. They need to do things about these problems. I think addressing the team like they did, like Mike McDaniel said he did, about accountability and about the things that have been happening with the team behind closed doors, about missing practices and showing up late for meetings and things like that. I think the fact that he said that there is going to be repercussions for these things from here on out, and he laid it out very clear to every person on the team. This is how it's going to be. And if you don't like it, and if you have an issue with it, and you show up late, and you do these things, you're going to show me that you don't want to be here. And that's what he told everybody. So that's a good step. So hopefully they can continue to grow in this, and hopefully Mike McDaniel especially can continue that attitude with his team as we proceed. Do I want Chris Grier here or Mike McDaniel? I don't know. Definitely don't want Chris Grier here. I'm still kind of on the fence about Mike McDaniel. I do wish he would give up play calling, but if he can continue to be about what he talked about today, if he can be about that, then I would be significantly more confident in him going into next season. So it's a good start. And that's all I really have to say about the meeting or the press conference. It's a good start. Am I feeling hopeful again about it? No, not yet. I want to see some of this stuff implemented. I want to see an example made out of Tyreek Hill. I want to see him separated from the team. I want to see him traded. But we have to wait till June 1st for that. I mean, well, we don't have to wait that long, especially if a team is willing to incur the dead cap hit. But the most logical way would be to wait till June 1st and trade him. But we'll see what happens. But I definitely think that an example needs to be made of Tyreek Hill for what he's done. And if he doesn't end up getting caught or cut or traded, I think that if he continues to play on this team, he needs to be perfect off the field. I'm not talking about on the field. I'm talking about off the field. In the way he conducts himself and the way he conducts himself around the team and in civilian life, he needs to be perfect. No more. No more crap going on. No more drama. No more. And just delete your Twitter account, you troll. That'd be a good freaking start, Tyreek. Because you're just bringing bad attention to yourselves and this team. And it needs to stop. So that'd be a good start. But let's go through the rankings that I have, well, grades that I've given for this team this year. And let's start with the general manager. We're going to start at the top and work our way down. And these are just standard school grades. And for the most part, most of you know why I'm giving these rankings. You might disagree. If you do, comment below and tell me what your rankings, what your grades are for this team. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Absolutely. So let's start with the general manager. For the general manager, Chris Grier, since he's the only person in this category, I'm giving him an F. I think Chris Grier is failing at the position right now. Now, I probably could have given him a D or D minus because he has made a few good decisions. And no, I'm not going to do that because he's done too much, or he hasn't done enough to deal with the problems that we've had on this team for years. Years he's had opportunities to do this. That's why he gets an F, because he has refused to deal with the problems on this team. F for Chris Grier. Plenty of room for improvement, buddy. Especially since you're staying here. Why don't you bring that F up? Coaching. And this involves all position coaches, head coach, offense and defensive coordinator. Yes, we have an offensive coordinator. Frank just doesn't get a lot of attention because Mike's calling the plays. Coaching as a whole on this team. I'm going to give him a C plus. Now, that would be so much higher if Mike McDaniel would stop some of the stupid crap and take better control of his team. Now, with this press conference, the little things that he said and the meeting that he had, that meeting definitely happened with the team. The meeting with Tyreek Hill definitely happened. So, with those things, he could improve on that C plus. And if he would just improve himself, that C plus would be a B plus for sure. Because our position coaches are great. We have very good position coaches. So, I mean, all the way across, our position coaches do a fantastic job. Special teams coach, he did much better this year. So I'm not going to talk too much smack on our special teams coach. I've been calling for his job for years, but I will say this year it hasn't been as bad as it has been. So I guess way to improve a little bit. But overall, coaching gets a C plus. Special teams, I'm giving them a B minus. They did play better this year, and the main reason that they're getting a B minus is because of our kicker. He had a fantastic year. Was clutch for us on multiple occasions. Had some huge kicks. So Sanders did a great job for us. Our kicker was amazing, and because of him and him alone, our special team gets a B minus instead of a C. For defense, defensive line gets a B. With all the injuries that our defensive line had, they did a fantastic job. Everything considered, they did great. Ogba was amazing. I can't say enough about Ogba because he wasn't even supposed to be here this year. He was brought in as an oh crap signing. So our entire defensive line did a fantastic job. I mean, they could always do a little better, but for the most part, I'm giving our defensive line a B for the year. Linebackers, A minus. Our linebacking core improved so much this year. Lots of tackles, always in the gaps, always making plays, interceptions. Our middle linebackers had a great year. And if you don't think they had a great year, look at some of the highlights from the games that they've played. Pick one, it doesn't matter. Our linebackers were incredible. So one of the best grades that I'm giving to our team is our linebacking core. Linebackers did a fantastic job. Cornerbacks. Our corners, I'm giving a B minus. A lot of room for improvement. Blew some tackles, missed some plays. But all in all, did a pretty decent job. Pretty good job for our cornerbacks. I was very impressed with Storm Duck. I mean, he had some hard assignments in some of these games. For an undrafted free agent, he did well. He's learning. He's going to be even better next year, and I cannot wait to see the growth from Storm Duck next year. Also, Kader Kohu, another undrafted free agent, he had a great season. Was it flashy with a bunch of interceptions? No, but he had a good season. Especially after having a sophomore slump last year and not doing so well. He came back this year and played well. So congratulations to our cornerbacks. I'm giving y'all a B minus. Safeties. Safeties get a C. A C to a C minus. I'm really undecided there because our safeties have blown some games this year. They've blown a lot of coverage. They've missed a lot of tackles. They've been in position to make plays, and they have not done it repeatedly. Our safeties had an off year, to say it the nicest way. So our safeties get a C. I'm going to give them a C minus. C minus. Quarterback, and this is the quarterback position as a whole, not just Tua Tagovailoa, but our quarterback room gets a C. Could have been so much better. Our second string and third string quarterbacks were terrible all year, except for one game. Every other game, our quarterbacks played like crap. Tua had some good games. He had two bad games during the season as well. So I think a good fair grade for quarterbacks is a C. Lots of room for improvement, and if we can get some backup quarterbacks onto this team and get Tua to stay healthy, that could very easily be an A. But it's not. It's a C. And this is my grades for this team. And this isn't thinking about players that I like. This is strictly off of their performances. Tight ends. Tight ends get an A for the year. Now I know that we had some issues with some run blocking plays here and there, and Julian Hill. I know we had some problems with a lot of players at times, but a lot of great plays were made by Julian Hill as well. And I don't even really like Julian Hill, but I can admit that he did some good things on the field. Also, Durham Smythe did some good things on the field, and Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith was electric. Single-handedly won some games for us, too. Jonnu Smith played great most of the year. He did well, and almost exclusively because of Jonnu Smith, the tight end room gets an A for the year. And part of that's because he got snubbed in the Pro Bowl. So the fact that Jonnu isn't a Pro Bowler is absolutely disgusting to me. Next one, wide receivers. Wide receivers get a B or a B+, somewhere in there. A high B. There was just too much. There just wasn't enough production from them. And part of it was because we didn't have the proper quarterback throwing to them at all. And the other part was they were dropping balls. So I'm not prepared to give our wide receivers anything more than a B. It could have been better. Hopefully it's better next year. I really feel like getting rid of Tyreek Hill would be a good thing for our team. And it'll give us a need for a tall receiver, a big body receiver that we desperately need. And if we do that, that can definitely improve next year. And plus, pardon me, and plus Tua would absolutely love a big receiver. So, running backs. Running backs get a B. Running backs could have been so much better this year, but it wasn't their fault. It wasn't their fault. They get a B, and it should have been an A, but I'm giving them the B because it wasn't their fault. It was the offensive line's fault. And our offensive line, for the final grade, for the last room on this team, gets an F. Our offensive line was hot garbage all year. We were behind the 8 ball every single game with our offensive line. Offensive line was hot garbage. Aaron Brewer probably gets a pass. Patrick Paul played well for a rookie, but had a lot of issues. And that's what happens with a rookie. And I'm not losing sight of that. But aside from Armstead and Brewer and Patrick Paul, I'm okay with everybody else going bye-bye. Whole new offensive line. We need a reworking of our offensive line in the worst way. And like I said, I would not be disappointed if in this draft coming up, if we spend 7 of our 10 draft picks on linemen. That's how sure I am that if we improve this offensive line and get some youth in there and some decent players, that our team will improve greatly. If that's the only thing we change, our team would improve so much. So an F for the offensive line. Shame on you, offensive line. Shame on you, Chris Grier, for not fixing that problem, and you knew it was a problem. So that's my rankings. That's what I think about the grades for this team from last year. Hopefully a lot of this improves. Guys, you get a chance, go look at the press conference from Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel. It was good to listen to. And it does make me feel good that at least they're admitting these problems and that they're saying that they're going to fix them. When they do that, they're creating accountability for them, and it means that they're going to have to fix it, or a lot of people are going to be, or they won't make it next year. They won't make it on this team. They'll be gone if they don't fix this stuff this year. So thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you for watching this video. Give it a like, comment, subscribe, share it with your mother. Whatever you got to do, save a puppy by sharing this video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Fins up. Stay hopeful.